Nick, I think this might be. Actually, this is the most prepared JWST episode in
a long time.
Nearly 2 years we've been doing this.
Yeah.
Nick,
I agree.
No, you don't buddy.
Oh.
You don't. I mean, the fact that you are here prepared is obviously a big part of it.
I see your notes, and I assume that those are things that you have done, like, that you're very prepared. So I just assumed that, like, we're like, look at how prepared we are.
And Nick, with that, we're not going to talk about the fact that the Cardinal still is here. We're not going to talk about any other shenanigans. We're gonna get into the show.
You say, real quick, you say he's still. Don't you mean like has returned?
No, she's still flipping. Like she might. I
thought
gone.
She left.
She teases, but she's still here. I literally almost took a picture of her today just to send to you, just to prove that I'm not insane. Like she's.
I never
in this
thought
plane
that you were
of
insane.
existence.
Yeah.
Shut up, you butt. All right, Nick, we're gonna start the show. Hello and welcome to the Year We Started a Podcast. It's a podcast born Phoenix-like from the prepared and etc. whatever podcast. We're ready.
Yeah.
We weren't ready for the intro, but we're ready for the show. I'm your co-host Jeff.
I am your other co-host Nick.
Nick, okay, we have to do two housekeeping things first. One, I started reading a fiction book again. None of them that you recommended. I feel bad, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it's fine. What do you read?
We Are Legion, We Are Bob. It is a science fiction. It has the same. Audio
Author?
reader. What's the
narrator.
Thank you. It has the same narrator as gosh dang, I'm blanking on this. The Hail Mary by
Project
Andy
Hail
Weir.
Mary.
Yeah, Project Hail Mary. It has the same narrator as that, and so like that was always in the back of my mind. Like I like that so much, and I want to dip back in. And this is one of the most like adjacent science fiction books. That's actually a series. I think there's like 3 books. Anyways, I'm getting ready to wrap up book 1 and. Very looking forward to more. It's weird how if I can convince myself to get over the intro hurdle, I just dive into things. It's crazy. But anyways, I don't really have anything like interesting to say other than it's a very interesting concept about science fiction and just I honestly it doesn't. We're not going to get into it today, Nick. It's we have too many other good things. My main thing that I wanted to talk about before we get into cool stuff is when's the last time you've sold a car?
I purchased a new car for the only time in my entire life in 2019, and I sold them my old car. Or that's not true. We were going to sell them my old car, and then I sold it to a friend. So I have one time in my life sold a car to a family friend, and my car had 230,000 miles on it. I wasn't getting a lot of money.
So here's my situation. So first off, I hate the whole concept of selling a car because it's such a weird, intimate thing. My stupid butt has been in this stupid car for so long. Like, I know all the weird things about it. And so, recently, a few months ago, we had purchased a new family vehicle, and now we needed to sell old family vehicle. And it is a 2008 and has 205,000 miles. I've replaced the transmission in this stupid car. It has a handful of things that are not right about it. For sure.
Right.
And I'm not trying to make I'm not trying to make a fortune off this little stinker. But I want to make a reasonable amount of money off of selling it. But just the amount of human interaction required to sell a car to a third party is it's
a lot.
Enormous.
It seems like a lot. I was very intimidated by it. I was just like, okay, how little money would I take for my old car?
Yes. And what do I do? Is it okay to just let them drive away? I guess so, because they're going to leave whatever car they drove in with. But then do I ask, I haven't exchanged funds with a non-company person for any amount of money in literally my entire life. Is cash the best? I literally work in finance. I don't even know. Like,
yes, and then there's a good PayPal option too. But like, I mean, it depends, dude. It's so hard, dude. It's so hard. What you should not do is like Zelle or like freaking a Cash App or Venmo, because I think
you can dispute those. Yeah, I am smart enough to not do that. Yeah.
Yes. Bike selling is like a really big thing. Like everyone always resells their bike when they get a new bike, and Jen and I luckily have not had to do that, except for we did sell her first bike, and it was the easiest thing ever. And we did it we did cash only, and I was like, okay, I think that was the only time in our life it'll ever be this easy. Let's just never get another bike. Like, let's just stay with it'll be fine. It'll be fine.
I'm only buying new things, and I drive them until I ship them off the cliff, and that'll be it.
Correct. Yeah. I will drive this car until it has no more miles left to give.
Which is, the sad thing is like, that's kind of where we were at with this. Like, it has 205,000 miles. We've replaced it. And like, I just didn't have the heart to like give it away to the dealership for $1,000 or whatever they were willing to give for it.
Right.
And like, I mean, I know I can do better than that with any amount of like effort at all. If I can just get over myself, even the tiniest of bits. And like, I know it's not going to be that bad. But I am going to list it on good old Facebook Marketplace, I guess, tomorrow.
Oh, good luck with that. I have no idea how that goes. So
I don't even know what to do. I think that's the easiest route.
I'm probably.
But anyways, I'm gonna report back on how selling a car goes, and this probably seems like an alien thing to be anxious about as a person who's probably been in the world longer than me, or somebody who's, I don't know, a more responsible, more outgoing person than myself. But the thought of like, I don't want to barter. The whole bartering system with used vehicles is just, oh gosh. I want to put it up for a price and you buy it, and then we'll never talk. And then you somehow send the money to me. It gets here safely, and then I give you the car, and I'll like wave at the on my front step, and tell you goodbye, and I never hear from you again. I know that's not how it actually works, but that's in my mind how I'd like it to work. That's how it works. That's how it works if you want to, like, lose 2/3 of the value of your car. Like, you can. I've Googled it, Nick. You can have people come pick up your car with no questions asked. They will not pay you any money for it, hardly.
Oh my gosh, Jeff.
Nick, you have a good topic. I have two.
I'm so excited for your topics.
I have two things that I really want to talk about. So we're gonna hop right into it.
Please.
Did you know that we sent a really cool telescope recently into
No, I haven't heard anything about it. And if anyone's told me about it, I've just filtered that information out of my life.
So I'm going to send you this here. This will be the very first thing you ever seen. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about JWST, another update. And I feel like it's fallen out of the zeitgeist that is the internet. So I feel like now I can like take a more leveled approach at some of these things.
What is this photo?
Okay. Just real briefly, do you want to explain what you're seeing right now?
I mean, okay, so it's space, and there's like three, I don't even know what they're looking, what you'd call them, like, I assume they're like solar systems or something.
They're three galaxies.
Oh, galaxies. Okay, they're galaxies. They're swirling lights of amazing beautifulness, especially the big one on the right, which is slightly oblong and has a slightly oblong, like, even brighter center. And it's like swirls of red and light blue light, mostly red, of just stars everywhere. Oh my gosh, and there's two more that are smaller.
Yeah,
one of them's blue.
Okay, I accidentally sent you the wrong links to the thing I want to talk about. Can you real quickly
delete that from my brain?
Delete that from your brain, and then in the show notes that are today's show notes. I have two images that I want you to compare. I kind of jumped the gun a little bit. So look at the first one, and then
you're a bad person. Okay, it didn't autoplay. Jeff is literally straight out of 1999 or 2006, and sent me "Never Gonna Give You Up." So I appreciate that a lot.
I've upset your dogs too.
You see, you've upset my dog. It's great.
Okay, so after the Rickroll. I'm sorry, I just had to do
that. No, I respect it. I do.
But no, I actually did send you the wrong link, though.
This isn't the same thing. Jeff sent me the older photo, and it's like...
No, it's not older. It's not older. Let me explain.
Oh, okay.
There's a lot more here to this than what you are thinking there might be here. So I sent you the more quote unquote detailed version first. There actually have been two like more what I would consider to be I don't know, prettier pictures than what you're looking at.
Okay.
The first one was from the Hubble, which I haven't sent you, and then the second one was from the NearCam. And the one that I sent you just now is from Miri, which is the mid infrared camera.
Okay.
And what we're looking at is, and honestly, it's kind of cool that you've seen them in the wrong order that I wanted to show you, because you'll kind of have an appreciation for what you're looking at on the outside of it. But anyway, so this was a spiral galaxy that had a smaller galaxy ram into the middle of it, that crashed into the middle of it. And so what you are looking at in both of these pictures is basically a 2-layer ripple. It will continue to probably ripple out. Just how gravity works is pretty wild. But the middle part is the second ripple, but the first ripple is like that outside ring in the picture that I've sent you most recently.
Okay.
And what's really, really cool is what happened when that rippled out is it picked up a lot of space dust, thank you, gravity, and created like a whole star-forming like outside ring around that entire galaxy.
I was going to say, it is like shockingly bright on the outside compared to the inside. Yeah.
Yes. And we were never able to see a whole lot of detail of that outside ring until we took a picture using Miri, which is the mid-infrared. The mid-infrared is the thing that can see through all the dust. So, like, we knew that there were lots of stars being created, but this first look through the mid-infrared allowed us to see really all the detail around that.
That's
and
really cool.
I think it's, I mean, the original picture I sent you is beautiful, and the one that the Hubble took as well is beautiful. I love the idea that we can somehow through science just turn off dust and just see through to like this whole star forming thing. It is I love the science behind it so much. It made me so happy.
Me too. It sounds like unrealistic. Like, oh yeah, this camera sees through dust so that we can get a more detailed photo, but also of a star-forming ring around the outside of a galaxy that has been hit by another.
Yes, it's two galaxies smashed together.
That's like the most. That if someone made that a sci-fi concept or plot point or something, I'd be like, that seems unrealistic.
Right? That's impossible.
Like, God, I can't suspend disbelief that hard. Can't put one past me, author.
But like just the fact that, I mean, now you've seen them both, so you can like toggle between them. But the fact that like if you look at the mid infrared and you can see from the mirror cam that outside ring that is just the only reason why that exists the way that it is because of just that first ripple and picking up all that space dust and creating all those stars.
Craziness
is so beautiful and crazy, and we were never able to like we theorized that it was there, and we could see like evidence that it was there in some of those other images, but to see it so clearly, especially along the edge that's closest to us, which is the really bright bottom left or bottom right corner, like just so many crazy cool like little star systems getting created. It's amazing. It's seriously amazing.
Star forming ring. That's a thing I didn't know was a thing. There you go. It's unbelievable, dude. Unbelievably cool.
So Mars stuff also makes me happy. Nick, how long do you feel like it's been since the Mars lander landed on Mars? Like if you had to take a stab, like the most recent one.
2 years.
It's happened since our podcast started, so I can give you that.
So a year. A year
is what you would say.
Yeah.
I mean, the two things you say. I would split the difference. It landed 18 months ago.
Okay.
And so for me, that seemed like a long time. I mean, it's crazy to think that these like monumental things that I know that I have like on video, me watching the original craft taking off, and then I have me watching the play-by-play as it landed. Like this was a very monumental thing. I remember like watching the first flight of the little helicopter guys.
Yep.
And it like just everything went so well. And this is to me the first big like announcement, quote unquote, since they've started the mission, like the first deviation perhaps from what the original plan was. So the original idea was, among many, many other things, we were going to take samples of rocks from Mars and somehow get them to Earth, which, as you might imagine, is
kind of
a challenging problem.
I was going to say,
doesn't
sound easy.
The original idea was that we would, with Perseverance, go through and pick up rocks, put them in a capsule, and a future rover of some sort or some sort of robot would pick them up, or even a person someday would pick them up and then ship them back to Earth. And that was our original plan. And then we got to Mars, and we've had these last 18 months, and it's gone incredibly, incredibly well. But before I get into what has changed, I'll let me elaborate just a little bit on what we were originally going to do. So we were going to have a lander land onto Mars, a new one, and it was going to be two parts. One part was going to be a fetch rover, effectively. Like, it was going to be a new rover that was going to go around where Perseverance went and go pick up these capsules, pick them up, and then bring them back over to what was the second part, which was the MAV, the Mars Ascent Vehicle. And it was going to be a rocket that was going to launch into space.
Okay.
And it was going to launch into space and pass off these samples to an orbiter that was made by the European Space Agency, that was going to pick these up and then come back to Earth and then land to Earth, and we would have Mars rocks. So that was the original plan. Pretty wild. A lot that went into that. And like, that wasn't just theoretical. There was a lot of science that had already gone into that.
Okay.
But things happen, Nick.
Yes.
Feel free to interrupt me at any point.
No, I don't have much to say, because it's just like, oh God, this sounds like, I feel bad for people having to go through all this. You know what I mean? Like, this
exactly.
Is a lot.
But sometimes, Nick, hard things end up going better than you think. So
I believe it.
Ingenuity was the name of the little helicopter friend that came with Perseverance.
Okay.
Ingenuity did absolutely fantastic. There's been like dozens and dozens of more test flights than they were anticipating being able to do. Of course, NASA likes to shoot low, under promise, over deliver on literally everything they do that's extraterrestrial. So it was that, but still, like they did not expect it to work so well.
Okay.
And secondly, Perseverance is doing fan-flippin-tastic. And
awesome.
That's allowed a whole new scope of things to occur. So basically where we're at now is instead of sending and the other part of this too is the thing that they were wanting to do, where they had the lander, where there was a fetch rover and then a rocket that would launch back up into space. That was super expensive. And so if there was any way to cut costs, or, the last thing we want to do is have the entire program cut. So we want to, if there's any opportunity to be more efficient, certainly willing to do it. From all the things that we've done on Mars in the last 18 months, we've been able to make it significantly less costly, and it's pretty cool what we're planning to do. So the current plan now, we're scrapping the old plan. Perseverance is doing so good that we're expecting by the time that we get there to pick up the samples, which will be around 2030, depending on how things go, but that's the current plan, around 2030. We will, instead of having a fetch rover, we will have Perseverance be the fetch rover. So he'll pick up all the things that he's done so far and any future ones, and he'll grab them and he will take them over to what will still be the Mars Ascent Vehicle, the MAV, so the rocket that's going to launch back up into space after it lands. So he's gonna pick up his own stuff. He's going to take it to the MAV, and the MAV is now going to have an arm that's going to be built by the European Space Agency that's going to take them from Perseverance and place them inside the MAV.
Hell yeah.
And what's even cooler is the reason why they feel so confident in this is that if it fails, the Ingenuity helicopter has done so good that they're going to send, because it's like literally a 100th of the cost, they're going to send 2 backup helicopters that have the ability to grab the samples themselves and hand them to the MAV, just in case Percy can't do it himself. So there's 3 layers of redundancy here, and it's going to be significantly cheaper, 100% more likely to actually happen.
So that's the thing I've always wondered about this stuff, is like, I've always felt that, like, oh dude, if anything goes wrong, like, it's so far away, it's so expensive, it's so complex that, like, how do you build redundancy? And I know you just have your original thing way overperform and do awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. The biggest stressor will be, can we land a vehicle on Mars that is capable of launching off Mars and having a reconnaissance with a orbiting body that is going to go back to Earth? Like that's tough. But if it happens,
sure.
the actual picking up the samples of rocks and putting them on there, there's 3 different options for how this is going to work. Either 2 of the helicopters or Perseverance itself. And that's so cool. And it's so great that like we're so confident now on helicopter abilities on Mars that like it literally doesn't even matter if the main fetch rover doesn't happen. The fetch rover that is now Perseverance, who wasn't even planned to be the fetch rover. Like there's just that is so stinking cool that we're so confident now. Whereas it was all just completely experimental when we launched this in the direction of Mars.
Dude.
I love it, and it's so cool and so cheap, much cheaper and more likely to actually happen. And I'm excited. It's going to be a long time. 2030 is a long time away, Nick. But I'm so happy to have this sort of thing happen in my lifetime. And it doesn't get the attention that I think it deserves. It's so stinking cool. I don't know.
Dude, it's really cool. No. It's very, very cool. I just didn't want it up to the flow. And I don't have much to say except that it's awesome. Like, it's impressive. It's awesome. It's awesome to see that like we're kind of back in space and like breaking new frontiers again, because like we've talked about this a lot, but you know, we didn't have this kind of success with space stuff at all for most of our lives, like or rather basically all of our lives, right? Like, so I don't know. This is really, really cool, really wild. I'm super excited for it. I'm loving every update, and yeah, I don't know.
Anyways, so this is a long space stuff segment, but
hell yeah.
Speaking of things I don't know enough about, Nick, do you want to hop into your thing?
Sure, yeah. Okay, so we talked about this a little bit on our Patreon podcast, but Bill Russell, the Celtic legend and NBA legend, just passed away on July 31st, so a little over or almost 2 weeks ago, and you and I haven't recorded a main episode since then. And so I wanted to do a thing talking about Bill Russell because we've done like little mini Nick deep dives and Jeff deep dives on players individually before. But so I wanted to go into this, and Bill Russell is a little bit unique for us in these kinds of things, in that Bill Russell was an activist during the 60s and during the civil rights movements in the 50s. And was a very outspoken and public figure in that time on civil rights. And because of that, I wanted to do a little bit of focus on him as a person. And I think I have too much stuff to do both him as a person and as a player. So today we're just going to talk about him off of the court. And then
awesome.
Because I think you should lead with it with him. He was... I think that, like, short of Jackie Robinson and Muhammad Ali, who I don't know either of their stories nearly well enough to try to compare, and I don't know why you would, want to see who measures up higher. I think he's, like, one of the most important black athletes of all time in terms of, like, his impact off the court. So we're just going to do Bill Russell. We're going to lead with him off the court this week. And then next time whether it's, I'm not sure if it'll be our next one, if you have a topic, then maybe we'll do one of your topics first or whatever. We'll come back.
I have nothing but a giant grin on my face right now. I'm so excited.
So today, no basketball numbers or talk about basketball really, but we'll come back at it. Okay. So, Bill Russell, when he was drafted in 1956, and the only thing I'll say about him before that is that he comes into the NBA as an insane winner, insanely qualified. He misses the first 2 seasons of his NBA career because he's playing he's in the Olympics. I actually don't remember if he was in the Olympics as a basketball player because I think he was a multi-sport athlete.
Yeah.
But so he comes into the NBA in 1956, and he's the only black player on the Celtics. They had a black player previously, but he is the only black player on the Celtics. And the Celtics are from Boston, for our fans who don't know, and probably, I'm sure most of you guys know. And Boston was a little bit of a challenging place for Bill Russell. So talking about early fans, and I'm quoting him here. I am going to quote a lot in this one, because I think, like, a lot of it's straight from his mouth and some of it's straight from, I also quoted a couple of things from his daughter, who is a brilliant writer and incredibly intelligent, but I figure who can speak to their experiences better than them? I'm not going to paraphrase. So anyways, talking about earlier fans. A few years after he was drafted, he said, "We had a handful of black men on the team. There were still only about 15 black men playing in the league, so I complained about there being a quota, a cap to how many black players could be on the team. That complaint led to change. The Celtics also ran a poll asking fans how they could increase attendance. More than 50% of the fans polled answered, quote, have fewer black guys on the team. I refuse to let yeah. Can you imagine that being a response? I know I know that we are, in a world that has, there's no like post-racial world, right? Like that's just not a thing in the world, unfortunately. But like, yikes, just the like out there-ness of the bigotry.
It's a hard thing for me to even place that is a thing that existed with the person who shared 32 years on this planet with me. Like that
Right.
is the experience that they had as a grown person, and that person had that much overlap with my life, because that is literally unthinkable to even
Yes.
okay, sorry.
But-
It's just
no.
is unthinkable.
By the way, freaking have fewer black guys on the team to increase attendance. Bill Russell, I skipped over this part, but he was a 2-time NCAA champion before he came to the league, and then they won the championship the first year he was there, and then they lost it the next season, and then they won 8 in a row. Like,
Oh my God.
what are you asking for? You're asking for your team to not play the players who are playing good? Like, you're so dumb. You're so stupid. Like, on top of being racist, you're so dumb. Like, come on, man. Okay, which, by the way, like, the racism comes first. It totally does. But also, like,
Yeah.
you want your team to be worse. You're stupid. I hate you. Okay. Quote to him, I refuse to let the fans' bigotry, quote fans, evidence of their lack of character harm me. As far as I was concerned, I played for the Boston Celtics, the institution, and the Boston Celtics, my teammates. I did not play for the city or for the fans. He makes this distinction a couple of times. He had a tough relationship with Boston, the city he was supposedly representing, and he was, it started off with an adversarial relationship before the Civil Rights Movement had actually culminated, before the Civil Rights Act was passed, and he handled it, I think, with as much class and dignity as he could. But also, like, out the gate, he complained about there being not enough black players, and that there being a quota and a cap to how many black players could be on the team, and that led to change. Basically, I mean, I'm sure the winds of change were running that way anyways, but that complaint led to change.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so his daughter Karen Russell went to Harvard and wrote an article in the 80s. I should find the year. Hold on. Sorry. Yeah. So Karen Russell in 1987 writes an article titled Growing Up with Privilege and Prejudice in the New York Times, and she talks about her childhood. The article itself is less about Bill Russell and more about her perspective on being a black woman who grew up with both like the privilege of being, a rich black woman with like all the advantages that come with it. It's a very self-aware and vulnerable piece. It's really, really good. If anyone is interested, totally recommend it. But it's not as much about Bill. This is the stretch, and I'm sorry for this being kind of a longer quote, where she talked about some of this, like one of the more difficult periods of times in her childhood. So quoting here, one night we came home from a 3-day weekend and found we had been robbed. Our house was in shambles and the N-word was spray painted on the walls. The burglars had poured beer on the pool table and ripped up the felt. They had broken into my father's trophy case and smashed most of the trophies. I was petrified and shocked at the mess. Everyone was very upset. The police came, and after a while they left. It was then that my parents pulled back their bed covers to discover that the burglars had defecated in their bed.
No,
every time the Celtics went out on the road, vandals would come and tip over our garbage cans. My father went to the police station to complain. The police told him that raccoons were responsible, so he asked where he could apply for a gun permit. The raccoons never came back. The only time we were really scared was after my father wrote an article about racism in professional basketball for the Saturday Evening Post. He earned the nickname Felton X. We received threatening letters, and my parents notified the Federal Bureau of Investigation. What I find most telling about this episode is that years later, after Congress had passed the Freedom of Information Act, my father requested his FBI file and found that he was repeatedly referred to therein as, quote, an arrogant Negro who won't sign autographs for white children. Wow. I apologize for my use of that word. I'm just quoting there, and I don't think...
No, you're okay.
So, a little heavy. I think like there's some other instances. I read the other article that I referenced a lot in this one was a Slam article for Slam magazine that Bill Russell wrote titled Oh, that's why I can't find it. It's because I don't know that it's I don't believe that it's it's titled. It might be called Bill Russell's Fight Against Racism, but it's by Bill Russell, and I think that might be titled by the magazine after the fact. But that's not the title of the website link, so who knows? Regardless, you can find it if you search Bill Russell's Fight Against Racism or Bill Russell Slam Magazine. Incredibly good piece. There's a lot of individual instances, and one of the trends of it that is there in that point about him asking where he could apply for a gun permit is Russell was taught at a very young age, and I'm not going to go into these anecdotes too hard, but he was taught at a young age that he's living in a world where things aren't fair to him, and it is his responsibility to stand up for himself and stand up for the people around him. And he has a story about being 9 and a kid slapping him, and him complaining to his mom, and his mom driving him around to try to find the kid, and he thought that his mom was going to make the kid apologize or get their parents to apologize or something, and instead tells Russell, go stand up to him and tell him he can't do that, and if he doesn't stop, that you're gonna fight him. And that was the lesson that he learned, that which is a different world than it is today, right? But there's a couple other anecdotes like that really show his fortitude and his kind of bravery, because I mean, even saying to if vandals are coming and tipping over your garbage can in the 60s and you're a black man and you ask the police where you can apply for a gun permit, I'm not sure that always goes over. You know what I mean? I'm not sure that always goes over well. I think it's a dangerous move, but it's brave to stand up for yourself so strongly. Yeah.
So here's my question to you, Nicholas. So
yeah,
I've been, broadly speaking, pretty uninformed on Bill Russell type things. Mm-hmm. As a person who's been a relatively informed NBA, fan or follower of the game, was this something that was known or talked about regularly in any way, shape, or form prior to his death or decline?
Yes. So a lot of these are anecdotes. So he wrote the Slam article in 2020 with a lot more anecdotes, I think, that hadn't been out. But he also wrote 2 books, one while he was playing and then one in 1979 that I'm going to quote in a little bit. And he's kind of known, him and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar especially, there's a lot of instances and talk about the racism they faced in the 60s, in the aftermath of the civil rights movement, shortly leading up to it. So yes, it is. But I think that there's been a really good emphasis on it since he passed, and even just today, the NBA just announced that they're going to retire his. They're going to make his jersey the first jersey
league wide.
Yep.
Yeah, the retirement of number 6.
Yep.
Which is crazy, but that is very cool. And I think that's only happened a couple other times in sports. That's Gretzky 99 and Jackie Robinson 42.
Yep.
And number 6. That's pretty crazy.
Which is earned and awesome. I apologize. I know that this is going to be a lot of just me talking, and I apologize.
No. I think it's great. I feel, again, like I had texted you before we had talked about this. I feel very uninformed, much more than I ought to have been as a person. I haven't followed the league as long as you have, and I certainly am not as well informed even now, obviously. So the opportunity to learn is really great, and
totally.
I'm the sort of person who loves learning about the historical things about literally anything, and so to learn about a person who's helped shaped our landscape today of cultural understanding and just how this discussion is ongoing. I feel honored to be a part of that. So no harm for sure. Okay. I'm enjoying it a lot.
Glad to hear it. I will try. I try to do it justice. I think this is. I think he's just freaking impressive. Okay, so going back to him after the break-in, he actually looked. I'll quote him again, but. I looked into buying a different house in a different neighborhood, but people in that neighborhood started the petition to persuade the seller not to sell to me. Around this time, Medgar Evers, who, if you don't know, was a civil rights activist, was murdered by the KKK. His brother Charlie asked me if I would do a series of integrated basketball clinics for children, which I did. I marched in Washington, supported Ali. After that, the death threats started coming. I said then that I wasn't scared of the kind of men who come in the dark of the night. The fact is, I've never found fear to be useful.
Oh my gosh.
Right? I'm not afraid of the men who come in the dark of the night. I say after talking about a civil rights activist being murdered by the KKK.
Oh my gosh.
Medgar Evers was killed in 1963 and was a big activist in Mississippi in particular for the civil rights movement. And so after his brother Charlie and him asked if they if he would do an integrated basketball clinic for children, which I know I already said that, and he did, but it was really successful. And that was there's a theme of that when you read what he talked about. Is Russell wanted people to be seen for who they were. I know that's like the big theme of the 60s, and I know that sometimes like we overemphasize just the that line from Martin Luther King. But he talked about, like when he was hired after the end of his career to be the coach for the Celtics, or near the end of his playing career, he became a player coach when Red Auerbach moved to the front office. And he was asked if he got the job because he was black, and he said, no, I got the job because Red thought I could do it. And he has this very positive relationship with a lot of the white players on his team, even the ones who, I'll talk about it in just a second, but he led he protested a game in Kentucky, and some of the white players didn't take part in the protest with him. And one of them, Bob Cousy, later said it's one of the shameful moments of his career. But they have a very strong relationship because Russell treated people with grace. I don't think he expected anyone to be perfect, but he also stood up for himself against people who had actual bigotry. And I think there's a big emphasis for him on things like integration and like being able to lead an integrated basketball camp in the South in 1963 was a really big thing for him that he talks about multiple times. You can see him quoting it like a lot. And so I think that's like the kind of way that he wanted to emphasize his activism was the like integration. And obviously we're 60 years removed, and the world's a lot more integrated, especially sports, right?
Yeah, a bit. But still, like, honestly, the thing that I can only keep coming to from all of this conversation to this point is, my gosh, how did I not know this story? And how are we not more aware of this as a thing that has occurred? And I guarantee you there's analogs across all kinds of different verticals of competition, but also just other things in general. Anyway, it's crazy to think that this is mostly new. I know, like, he gets heralded as an activist, sure, but like the actual details are not a thing that have been a thing that I've been made aware of in a way.
And I probably did a poor job laying this out, but I wanted to start out by just talking about some of the things he went through before talking about some of the things that he did. Yeah. I mean, some of the things he went through, I think, are a very sensitive and hard topic to bring up. One, Karen Russell kind of alludes to the fact that people often downplayed the racism that she experienced, and I'm sure that there is an element of that as well. When a police chief, your local police station, I forget what he said. Police station told him that it was raccoons that were vandalizing his garbage cans. Right. That's probably them downplaying the racism that he experienced. And that was probably much more common and more pronounced in the 60s. But I mean, I think it's a hard thing to educate people on. And how much do you educate people on like individual acts of bigotry? Because like, individual acts of bigotry have, hate crimes are probably much lower than they were in the 60s, right? So like, I don't know. Right. It's a very hard, I know that this is like a sensitive thing, but I do think that we there's a lot of value in like learning about like some of the detailed stuff of it, which just sucks. By the way, I pulled out, I'm going to stop with the instances of the detailed accounts of the racism that he experienced, but the list goes much, much further on. He talks about being pulled over and being pulled out of the car and having his hands up with a huge crowd around him, and
I can only imagine. Yeah, right. It's not great now. I can only imagine to hop in a 50-year-old time machine. It's not great, but
right.
Yeah. So
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off though. About
no. It's just man, it hurts. It hurts to even think about. But
yeah, I
but
agree.
it's easy to it's an easy thing to try to pretend didn't happen because that's what we want to do. But just because we are want to do it does not mean that it is not the problem that we are still feeling the ripples of today, or not even ripples, like the direct impact of, depending on what the thing is.
Right. So one, I completely agree with you, and the ripples are still there, and I just want to say that he experienced so much and has been a mentor for people in the league and for people outside of that in other sports as well. Mm-hmm. For his entire career, his post-playing career, or his entire life post-playing career, I should say. And I think that's a huge statement all its own that he was able to live his life with that much grace. But to go into some of the individual acts of activism and some of the things that he said and believed in 1961, there's one of the bigger ones that is often quoted for him. There was Russell led a player protest after several black players on the Celtics were refused service at the Phoenix Hotel coffee shop in Lexington, Kentucky, while they were in town to play the St. Louis Hawks. Russell communicated with the players of the other team to coordinate a protest, and some of the white players, I believe, I didn't actually confirm that, but I thought that I had read that, so I'm sorry I couldn't find that detail, led a player protest that is still mentioned to this day, and was brought up when he received the Medal of Freedom from Obama. He also marched with Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King during the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom in 1963, and was present and in the front row for Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech.
Wow.
Which is incredible all its own. I couldn't find this anecdote, so I feel like I may be mixing it up with someone else, and I apologize if so, but I thought that I had heard that he was supposed to be on stage with him, not necessarily at the "I Have a Dream" speech, but at some speech, and that Russell stepped aside because he wanted to give the activists who had actually done the work on the ground, done more work on the ground, the spotlight, even though King had asked him, but I couldn't find that confirmation of that, and so that that may just be Nick's memory mixing up different stories, and how that is, but him and King knew each other, and he was close to them, and he talks about playing the day after King died and how it was a game with no life or love or joy, which I can only imagine. He also helped students, spoke to students in support of a one-day black student boycott of Boston's public schools to protest segregation that same year in 1963. And he was involved in local issues in Boston, including being involved in planning the graduation and speaking to graduates at a predominantly black high school in 1966. In 1967, when boxing legend Muhammad Ali refused to fight in America's war on Vietnam, Russell joined other prominent black figures gathering in Cleveland to meet with Ali and publicly show support, which at the time was very unpopular. Excuse me, I'm sorry. The time was very unpopular. I think that's something that people don't really remember nowadays, is that a lot of parts of the civil rights movement, we look back on it fondly, as we should, and think of Martin Luther King Jr. and the civil rights activists as a whole as a positive thing that moved America forward, and it definitely was. But at the time, Martin Luther King, as a public figure, had a negative opinion rating in America. You know what I mean? That's insane to think about.
Which is not the case now by probably 80%, I would reckon.
Right. I wouldn't be surprised if it was higher, and I say that knowing what you're getting at, that getting 80% approval on any human being seems,
on anything. The sky is blue. Oh, yeah.
Well, actually, it's a little bit of a tealish, gray, something.
And also, it's a little bit blue and also a little bit red, so it's kind of red.
There you go.
So
there you
you're
go.
wrong. You're
Some
wrong.
said it's orange. I mean, I don't know what you want. It's, so I agree with you, right? Like it's crazy, but yeah, Martin Luther King had a negative opinion rating for good parts of his life, and I will tell you that Muhammad Ali received death threats, and so did Bill Russell, and maybe you can say death threats are not necessarily indicative of a large majority, but as a black man in the 60s, I imagine that putting yourself out there for more death threats is not exactly comforting.
No.
So there's that, and then the last one that I found really really interesting because I hadn't heard this, and I think this is a beautiful perspective on how to tackle hard issues. In 1979, and I hope that I can impress enough. This is in 1979. This perspective, he wrote a second book titled Second Wind. And there's a quote in it here. I'm going to quote 2 paragraphs from it. In a similar vein, I worry when I hear people and this is kind of outside of the civil rights activism. It's the last thing because I think that I think that his perspective on it, when you read some of like his words, it shows that it's less about explicitly anything to do with just race and more about the idea of people being treated as equal and with dignity and with respect to their freedoms and to their right to have dignity. So, quote, in a similar vein, I worry when I hear people crusading in the name of their kids. The most explosive social issues in recent years, such as abortion, pornography, and busing, have been debated according to their impact on kids, or at least what people claim will be their impact on kids. He says, quote, I can handle pornography myself, you'll hear the parent say, but I don't want my kid to be exposed to it. That's the voice of someone who's about to attack somebody else's freedom. People have persecuted homosexuals for eons in the name of God and kids. Homosexuals, it's claimed, are vampires who replenish their ranks by preying on youth. We have to protect our children, is the cry. But homosexuals are our children, and we should treat them as so. As adults, they deserve the full respect given heterosexuals. I have my own fears and insecurities about sex, but I don't think it's my right to impose them on the world or to hide things from my children. I have too much respect for them to do so. My duty to them is to love them and to help them interpret the world so that they will be able to make free choices and act on them. I worry a great deal about my children, but the best medicine for those worries is in their strength and independence, not in their ignorance. And I like, that's the end of the quote. I can't even imagine a pro athlete saying this in 1979. Like
that was so lots of feelings and opinions and such.
Yeah.
Here's where I would put that. That is buck wild to even say today if you were an athlete. So to say that 50 years ago is pretty crazy. Or 45, 43, 44 years ago.
Right. I think like he gets at it there too when he says that I have my own insecurities about sex. I think that a lot of people have insecurities about sex and they're afraid for their children, and that's like an understandable impulse. But you know, the my duty to them is to love them and help them interpret the world so that they will be able to make free choices and act on them. The best medicine for those worries is in their strength and independence, not in their ignorance. It's literally perfect, right? Like it's distills the problem down. Even if it's something that you worry about. Even if it is something you're scared of, the best way to help them is to make them more complete people who understand others as a whole, right? Like you have to empower people.
Right. The answer is not ignorance, and like I don't even think there's a world in which that you can argue. I mean, obviously there's a world in which you can argue at any point. Literally, that's the internet today. But like,
correct.
I don't think that there's a good world in which you could argue any opposite of that. Like the answer to a lot of our things that are hard issues are just talk about it openly, explain why you feel the way you feel, and honestly, if the worst thing that we can do is to result in love regardless, like to support regardless of what you feel, like there's not a bad thing that's gonna come from like helping other people. We're flirting on like the antithesis of what this podcast is originally founded on 2 years ago. I don't even care. I don't even care. I think it's good. Like
you said, and like he's getting at, like it's about empowering people, right? You have to.
And I will say, hearing that as a voice from multiple decades ago, that is incredible, and I think we like to nitpick sort of, you know, the sort of things that are, you know, of our past, but there's certain people that just have voices that matter, that are valid across generations, across you know, what has been lots of different ebbs and flows of political and just popular opinion, and at the end of the day there's certain things that just still ring true regardless. And I mean, treat people good and such. That still works. That still works pretty good.
Right. I know that was kind of brushing the edge of like, you know, talking about things that like are relevant today and everything. I don't mean to do that.
No, it's good.
Like,
it does need to happen sometimes.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, I mean, this is who he was. This is a person of compassion. Was like fully into the end of it. The end of it was a person of compassion, and he instilled that in his children. And from what I can see in the writings from his daughter Karen Russell, and I think he, like, you know, he led with that. You know, his teammates were family for him long after their playing days, and he was a mentor for players throughout his life. And you know, if you want to talk about Bro Leslie, I think the way you lead with it is to talk about the compassion as a person. Like he was, and I don't say that any of this. I didn't want to bring any of this up to be like self-congratulatory dude who's like, oh, let me tell you about the tough stuff he went through. But this is, you know, the reality of like this is a giant in the sports world that I care about, that passed in like his life to me is freaking inspiring. And that kind of kindness-led attitude and philosophy on life and outlook is exactly what I think we should all be, is like wanting to empower children, wanting to treat them with more respect and give them a chance to live life with more dignity and more knowledge than we had, is like I think that's what he was about.
Yep, and not accepting just how it's been because how it's been, and there's a lot of opportunity for us to do better, and people like him have pushed us forward, and that's really cool. Man,
100% agree.
I can't wait to hear about how he does in basketball. That'll be fun.
Spoilers.
He's
real
good.
Real good. Spoilers. He won a lot. Like he annoyingly would not stop winning.
I think for this episode we can just skip all of the pleasantries and just call it good. This has been fun. We'll pick this up where we left off.